Welcome in to Between Two Meeples. I am Armando Castaneda, and today I get to teach you a game called Ice. Ice is a 1 to 5 player competitive game that takes about 90 minutes to play. In this game, you are in a frozen universe that gets about 7 days of summer, or from what I'm told, 4 degrees Celsius. So, in this game, you are the exploration leader, and you will be taking out archaeologists, and you are going to start excavating the ice to try to find these ancient artifacts. Collect enough ancient artifacts, turn them in for reputation, and the point of the game is to have the most reputation by the end. So, if this sounds interesting or you have this game and you're ready to set up, stick with me and we're ready to go. If at any point in this video you found it entertaining or useful in any way, please hit that like and subscribe button. It will help me out. Let's get setting up. After assembling the 4-part game board, first, place the 12 edifice tiles face down on the lowest layer. Then, place the 19 deep artifact tiles face down on the next layer. Followed by the 27 intermediate artifact tiles face down. Followed by the 37 surface artifact tiles face down. Finally, place the 48 snow tiles face down on the top layer, and this forms the surface of the game, and you have now completed the game board setup. Place one archaeologist on each tunnel tile. Place one camp and one archaeologist on the camp tile. Form pools around the board of camps, archaeologists, RP tokens, additional snow tiles, planning tokens, your discard bag. Set up your decree cards. Your decree cards for the first game will be the one with the white diamond on the bottom of the cards. You are going to go ahead and place those in a place where everybody can read them. Next, after you shuffle the request cards, place them in an area where they can be seen. Flip over the top card, and that is your discard pile. Set up your logbook. For the first play, you're going to want to choose the 6 cards that have the numbers on the corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make sure 6 is on the bottom, 1 is on the top, and create a deck. Next, you must choose a game board of your choice. In the Kickstarter version, there is 7. In the normal version, you will have 5 to choose from. Today, we will be setting up for a 2-player game. Next, take your corresponding expedition leader and place it next to your board. And take your point marker and place it on 5 on each board. Take the starting renown point tokens for your guild. On your first game, deal 2 request cards to each player face down. In a normal game, you will deal 4 request cards and each player will keep 2. Provide each player with a starting player aid. And give the person the first player token who has touched ice last. The exploration phase consists of 2 steps. Step 1, implementation of actions. On your turn, you will be required to spend at a minimum of 1 EP, maximum of 2 EP on your turn. Now, that doesn't mean that you only get 1 or 2 actions on your turn, because you can do as many free actions as you would like before you pass. Play goes around clockwise until all players have utilized all of their EP. Now note, if you proceed on to step 2 and you have not used all of your EP, you will lose it for that round. It does not carry over to the next round. So it is very important that you get through all of it. Step 2 is the end of day. So there's only one action that you do on the end of day, and that is send all of the ancient artifacts that you've excavated to the city to be researched. For every tile that you send in to get researched, you will gain renown for every anima that is on that ancient artifact. So if it's an artifact level 1, you'd get 1 renown. If it's an ancient artifact level 2, you would get 2 renown. That is one way to gain VP throughout the game and get set up for your endgame scoring. Action 1, build a camp. Place a new camp from your reserve and your expedition leader on any uncovered tile. So an uncovered tile is one that doesn't have a tile on top of it. So you can place your camp and your expedition leader on any tile, even if there is an expedition leader. The only placement rules is that you cannot put a camp on a tile that has another camp. Action 2 is call. This one, you can move your expedition leader to any camp. So if I needed to move him to here or from here to here, I could. If my expedition leader was already there, or he could be somewhere else, he doesn't have to be on the camp, you can place one archaeologist on any camp that you would like as well. Note on the board that if your expedition leader is on a tile with an archaeologist, when you use the call function, the archaeologist does stay back on that tile. He does not travel with your archaeologist during gameplay. Action 3. Spend 1 EP to acquire a planning token, which allows you to gain 1 additional EP the next round. Step 4. Overwork. You may spend 3 EP this turn instead of the usual 1, 2, but it does cost you 1 victory point or 1 RP in order to be able to perform that action. This action will become beneficial during gameplay if there's tiles that you are trying to get prior to somebody else stealing them from you. Action 5 is move. So you can see here on the board, everything is movable for your expedition leader, except for through these ravines here. You can see on the blue ravines, it's basically a hole in the ice, and you are not allowed to cross the hole in the ice. So you can move around, that is completely fine. So depending on how your board looks is going to be how difficult it is to move around your board. Some of the other things that we need to talk about during the move phase. So in order to get from here to here, it is 1. And you are able to cross any of the flat portions of the tiles. Where it gets tricky is that you are not allowed to move from a tile that is tip to tip. So you can see here, if I removed this tile, I would not be able to go from this tile to this tile in 1 move. I'd have to go from this tile to here, or from this tile to here to here. So you must cross a flat side of your hexagon tile in order to be able to move from one area to the other. Also, during the move phase, if you are moving from one spot to the next, you are allowed to move up to 3 archaeologists with you at a time. Now, note, if you are moving into an area and you do have more than 3 archaeologists in that area, when you move out of the area, you are only allowed to take 3 with you, and the other 2 that are there get left behind. Let's talk about Excavate. This has a standard cost of 3 EP to excavate any tile on the board. The exceptions to the rules are these tiles with rocks on it, or the Nanjuk tiles, will cost you 4, and any tile that has a camp on top of it will also cost you 4 EP to excavate. Now, let's talk about how we excavate for 4 EP when we're only allowed to spend 1 or 2 EP a turn. If I moved all of my guys here, the base price of this tile is 3 EP. Now you have to reduce the cost of every single archaeologist and expedition leader you have on the tile. So if this is a base cost of 3, I have 1, 2, 3, 4. So I have more archaeologists and expedition leaders enough to cover the cost of this. So this would be a free excavate for me on my turn. You can perform any number of excavations as long as they are free. Let's talk about what happens after we excavate. So we have some excavation placement rules. So if we were to excavate this tile, and I had my 4 guys on it, we would have to place 1 guy on each of the 3 visible tiles below before you would be able to stack your 4th guy on an additional tile. Do note, for your archaeologists and your expedition leaders, The edges of the game boards are considered as tiled. In some cases, there may already be explorers on lower tiles from the previous excavation. These must be taken into consideration when placing your explorers as well. So what they're trying to do is make sure that you have an even number of explorers on every tile after you have excavated. The only other placement rule is that after placing your explorers, if there was a camp present on the removed tile, so if we did remove this camp tile here, you are not allowed to place the camp tile on the edge of the board. The camp tile can only go on existing artifact tiles after the top layer of snow has been removed. Once you have excavated your snow tile, you want to secretly take it and place it into your hand. When it comes to the artifacts that you are going to pull up, these ones are going to go straight to your guild board and wait for the end of day. The only other rule that we need to talk about when it comes to excavating is if I were to excavate this tile here and remove this from the game, you need to check for collapses. So a collapse means that one tile is only connected to one other tile on the same level. So by me excavating this tile here, this one is now only connected to this guy, and it now gets discarded from the game. No one gets to use it. If there was a camp on this tile when it collapses, the camp also gets thrown out of the game and it is no longer playable. That goes the same for if there was an archaeologist on the tile and or if there was another expedition leader on the tile during collapse. So all items on the collapse tile will be removed from the game and then gameplay will move on. Action number 3. Consult the register. Draw 3 request cards from the pile and we will get to choose one card. I will go into what the request cards are a little bit later, but you will be able to choose one and you will be able to throw the rest into the draw pile. Resend. This costs 1 EP as well. You go directly to Exploration Phase Part 2, and now you're able to send up to 4 artifacts to the city. So do note that if you do the resend action, it will be the last action of your turn. If you do it when you have 4 or 5, 3, any number of EP, you have essentially passed the rest of your turn and you will not be able to take any other actions. So once we start getting through this first layer of artifacts, you can start seeing that now they have colors and they can go ahead and match where they belong. So as you can see here, the reds go on reds, the blue goes on the blue, and if I have a wild, I can choose wherever I would like to place my wild. So let's say I went right here and I wanted to stick it on top of my blue. One of the other actions that you have during gameplay, and it's considered a free action, there is 0 EP cost to be able to trigger it, and that is play a snow tile. On the backside of your player aid, it will have all of the definitions of what each artifact does and how it triggers. So let's go over 2 of them that I have on my board right now. So if I wanted to trigger the obliteration artifact, you would just flip over this top level of it, showing you that it is used. And that's going to be important for the preparation phase, or technically, that's going to be important for the end of the expedition phase, because during that, and we will get to that here in a minute. So let's say I trigger that obliteration. So what that does is it allows me to take out any tile that I am next to. So in this instance, I only have one option because this is the only uncovered tile that I can access to. I am not actually adjacent to this tile because it's touching tip to tip. So this is the only one that we can obliterate. So if we obliterated that, the disc goes into the discard pile. We now open up ourselves into a nice clean tile with us having 3 points of reduction on there, and you can now excavate this tile essentially for free. And you would put your guys down in the correct placement, and now you'd be able to bring this one into your play area. So these are the types of moves that you would want to do to trigger within the game. Once everyone around the table has passed, we go into what is called phase 2 of the exploration phase, or part 2, I guess is what you could call it. And in part 2, you get to send 3 artifacts to the city. So we're going to send these 2 blue artifacts to the city because they are starting to complete our request card. So because I've sent these 2 now, if I couldn't find the third piece by the end of the game, so if I couldn't find this half triangle or 2/3 triangle, I would end up with 4 renown or 4 victory points at the end of the game. So this is how you start collecting points. Now, be careful because the ones that you do not complete at the end of the game, you will lose 2 renown for not completing. The other thing that you cannot do is you cannot use the same discs twice. So you cannot say, I want to use this disc to complete this request, and I want to use this disc to complete this blue request as well. That is not allowed. You have to choose one artifact to one request card. Now that we've gotten through the exploration phase, let's transition to the preparation phase. This is what we would do. The first thing is that you would want to reset your EP to 5. If you had any planning tokens, you would turn in your planning token now, and you would move up 1. The next thing that you would do is you would flip over any used artifacts, giving you now the ability and the next day to, if you do not use your red artifact, to be able to turn them into the city. The other thing that you can do is, let's say that I did not want to have my wild anymore on the blue. I can now move my wild to any other artifact, and then it is stuck there until the next preparation phase. So this is the only time where you can change your artifacts around. The last thing that you would do in the preparation phase is go ahead and pass that first player token to the person on your left. You would need to flip a logbook. So once you flip your logbook card, you can see here, some of them give you a buff and some of them are not buffs. So depending on what game you're playing, depending on what edifice you have hooked up, but for the first player, for the first time, most of these are going to be pretty good for us in some fit, form, or function. So as you can see here, backup. Each player places an archaeologist from the reserve onto a tile where their expedition leader is located. So you get a bonus this round. All logbooks will have a different thing, a different effect for every single round. So this is how the game changes each round and each play. There is quite a few logbook cards in there. You will shuffle those up. You will create a deck of 6, and then you will flip one at the beginning of round 2, 3, all the way to 7. So I've now taught you how to play the game. I've taught you that there's 7 days, the preparation phase, the exploration phase, and everything that goes through it. We've just talked about the logbooks and how everything works. Now let's talk about what triggers the end game. The end game can be triggered in one of 2 ways. So the first and easiest way is going to be pulling out one of these edifice tiles. So the edifice tiles is the lowest layer of tile in the game, which you set up earlier. And the edifice tile doesn't make you the winner if you pull it. All you really get is 2 renown for it. And you get to trigger the game a lot earlier than most players would have expected it. The second way to end the game is if you never pull that edifice tile, if you don't get down there fast enough, you do have the 6 logbook cards that you do start flipping in round 2. Well, essentially you have 6 there because after you flip that last one for day 7, you finish that last round off. And if you still have not flipped the edifice tile by the end of day 7, the game is over at that point in time, and we get to start counting our renown that we've earned to try to see who's going to be the most glorious guild at the end of the day. So let's start breaking down, how do we count those victory points? That's going to be the key. In case I haven't mentioned it before, I probably should have, but every time you send a tile into your city from your guild board, you should be collecting renown for every anima that the tile has. So, for example, if I sent this tile into my city, I would get 1 renown for it. If I sent this tile into the city, I would be receiving 2 renown for that one because it has 2 anima. So that's how you collect renown throughout the game, is by sending those tiles into your city and collecting that money. So by the time day 7 ends, you should have compiled anywhere from 10 to 15 renown throughout gameplay, depending on how many tiles you sent. I sent a lot in my category here. I sent a lot of 1 animas, so that means that I might have sent quite a few tiles, but they're all worth 1 point. Whereas there's been games where I've sent anywhere between 6 or 7 level 2s, and I'm sitting there at 14, 15, 16, 17 renown going into counting. But it all depends on what those decrees and what those requests are. Is going to be what you focus on. Do you focus on digging down, or do you focus on digging out to try to collect all those victory points? Because at the end of the day, you want to be the most glorious guild, not necessarily dig all the way down and grab that edifice, because remember, the edifice is only worth 2 renown if you do get it. Before we get into endgame scoring, you have to declare your wilds in front of everybody and tell them what they have. So in this scenario, I'm going to say I have 3 wilds that I brought in. I'm going to say this one's a yellow, this one's a red, and this one is a red. What I normally try to do is I get them and I stack them with all the other yellows or the other reds so that I remember what I said that they were at the end of the day. Because those are going to be big when it comes to scoring. Some of those request cards and decree cards are going to need to be a very specific color. So make sure that you hold everyone accountable when it comes to what color that they chose. Now, let's get into the request cards. The request cards are one-time use only cards that you should have been acquiring throughout the game. You did start the game off with 2. You can see here I have 3. That's because I picked up an extra one during gameplay. Now I get to assign my tiles to the request cards, and hopefully I get to complete them, because if I do not complete them, it is minus 2 points. So let's take a look at my first completed request. So I'm going to turn in 3 blues right here on that one. So 3 level 1 animas to complete my green-blue mixture for 5 points. I'm going to go ahead and turn in a gray, a yellow, and a red right there to get 7 renown for that one. Now, as far as my yellow and my red goes, I have no more yellow and red left. So that is why I declared my wilds is going to be a yellow and a red, so that I can get those additional 4 victory points for completing that request card. So in this scenario, I was able to get 4 plus 5 is 9. I was able to get 16 additional renown going into the third part of scoring, which is our decree cards. So now I've gotten my 10 points from gameplay. I've gotten my 16 from this. I'm at 26 going into my decrees. So let's go ahead and figure out how we count decrees. So the decree cards are going to be for everyone to score off of. Those are your shared end game goals that were displayed at the very beginning of the game that everyone could work forward to. Now let's take a look at what I was able to pull in and how I'm able to score them. We're only going to go over a couple of them because the rulebook is actually done really, really well, and they show pictures of exactly how to score everything. So for this decree card, this one's a little bit tricky to explain without me having to physically read it out of the rulebook, but they do give a beautiful picture on how this one is. It doesn't matter the color, but it matters the shapes, and it actually walks you through at how to count that one up. But for the other ones that are going to be a little bit easier, let me go ahead and walk you through those ones. So this one here is any color out of 1 anima. So I've pulled in 10 level 1 tiles, so I would get 10 additional victory points for this one. So this last decree card is pretty self-explanatory. So you can see here that it is a wild symbol, and you can see it doesn't matter the color, but because it has a star shape on the inside, that means it has to be a wild symbol only. So I actually pulled 3 wilds off of the board. So because I've pulled 3 wilds off the board, I'm able to get 6 renown added to it. You have now learned how to play ice. I have given you the general how to set up. I've walked you through all the actions that you can take during the gameplay. I've talked you through the exploration and preparation phases. We've talked about end game triggers. We've talked about how to score all your points at the end and how to count them up, from your request cards to your decree cards and all of the RP that you've earned during the game by sending your tiles to the city area. If you have any further questions about the game when it comes to like what the tiles mean, the rulebook did an amazing job of laying everything out, talking about every degree card and breaking them down on what they mean. I do recommend going and looking up every single card that you pull up for the first few games, because some of the iconography can be a little tricky. Sometimes when you think it's it's only like one specific. So make sure that you do a little bit of reading of what your request card means and what your decree cards means prior to. So we would not want you to make the mistake of planning for the wrong things like I did in several of the games leading up to this video. But with that being said, thank you so much for joining me today. If I've missed anything, please leave it in the comments below, and I will try to ratify anything in my video after the fact. If you found this video at all useful, fun, intriguing, anything positive, please do me a favor, leave me a like and subscribe. That'll help me out. Thank you.